Okay, so this was a story that seemed pretty clear-cut. For weeks, the Clintons were giving a firm no. And then, suddenly, a total reversal. Former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have now agreed to testify in the congressional probe into Jeffrey Epstein. So, what on earth caused this complete change of heart? Let's get into it. Yeah, this is really the core question, isn't it? I mean, after weeks of publicly digging in their heels, what could have possibly prompted such a complete 180? We're going to dig into exactly why they went from a hard no to agreeing to show up in person. And when I say it was a big change, I mean it was stark. At first, the Clintons were absolutely firm. They'd give written statements, and that's it. They basically argued that a live hearing was just political theater. But now, they've agreed to testify in person. It's a complete flip. So that really gets us to the heart of the matter. A move this big doesn't just happen out of nowhere, right? There had to be some kind of powerful reason, a huge motivator. The real question is, what was it that finally backed them into a corner? And here it is. This is the answer. It turns out the Clintons were just days away from a House vote on whether to hold them in criminal contempt of Congress. And this isn't some minor slap on the wrist. We're talking about a really serious charge with major consequences. So let's break down just how real this threat was. If that vote had actually passed, it would have triggered a whole formal legal process. First, it gets referred to the Department of Justice. Then you're looking at a potential trial. And if they were found guilty, well, they could have faced fines or even prison time. The stakes were incredibly high. Okay, so here's the key takeaway. Their decision to testify wasn't just them, changing their minds. It was a calculated, strategic move. The moment they agreed to show up, that whole scary legal process, the vote, the DOJ referral, the trial, poof, it's all gone, completely off the table. Right, so now we know why they flipped. But let's back up for a second. What was this whole disagreement about in the first place? To really get it, we need to look at what both sides were saying their motivations were. You can really see the two competing stories here. On one side, you have the committee saying their goal was to dig as deep as they can, follow up on those written answers, and really probe any potential connections to Epstein. But the Clintons, they were telling a completely different story. They argued this was all just politics, claiming the Republican-controlled committee didn't really care about the truth and was just trying to distract from Donald Trump. And it's really important to keep a few key facts in mind here for context. Bill Clinton has said yes, he knew Epstein, but he flat out denies knowing anything about his crimes and says he cut off all contact 2 decades ago. Hillary Clinton says she never even met the guy. And this is a big one. Both of them had already given the committee sworn written statements before this whole standoff even started. So when you lay it all out, the picture becomes pretty clear, doesn't it? While the Clintons had some serious political worries about testifying, that threat of a criminal contempt charge, well, it just became the bigger problem. In the end, testifying was basically the lesser of two evils. But this whole thing isn't just about the Clintons. Their decision actually sets a whole new dynamic for the entire investigation. So you have to ask, what does this mean for the committee's work from here on out? And what does it mean for the other people they want to talk to? Okay, check out this quote from the Clinton spokesperson. They're not just saying, hey, we'll be there. They're very specifically framing this as setting a precedent that applies to everyone. Now, that is a very carefully chosen phrase, and it sure sounds like it's aimed at some other people who might be thinking of resisting the committee. So what does setting a precedent actually mean in this context? Well, it's a signal, plain and simple. The message they're sending is, hey, if a former president and a former Secretary of State are showing up, then maybe you should too. It's a clever way of turning their own situation into a new standard for everybody else the committee is after. And who are we talking about here? Well, the committee has made it very clear they are interested in questioning other big names with known ties to Epstein. People like Prince Andrew and Peter Mandelson. You can bet the committee is going to use the Clintons' agreement to really crank up the pressure on them to cooperate too. Which brings us to the final big question here. The standoff is done, the testimony is going to happen, but that core tension, it's still there. Is this hearing going to be a real, genuine effort to find the truth about Epstein's network? Or is it just going to turn into the political circus the Clintons were worried about from the start? Honestly, that's the question that's going to hang over this entire investigation as it heads into its next phase.